So with an S corporation, one of the things that we talk about is this reasonable comp, right? And just to back up a little bit on that, when you have a sole proprietorship or a single member LLC, every dollar of net income that you have is taxed at your federal income tax rate, your state if you have that, sometimes local, like in Pennsylvania, we have local income tax. And then in addition to that, you have to pay what we call self-employment or the FICA tax, Social Security and Medicare. And those two taxes are the taxes that you see normally in your paycheck, Social Security and Medicare. And what people don't always realize is that's just your half as the employee. The employer has to match that. So if there's $100 on your pay stub, the employer had to send in another $100 on your behalf. So when you're the business owner, you're both the employer and the employee, right? So every dollar of net income of your sole proprietorship or your single member LLC, it gets hit with that additional FICA tax, and that's an additional 15.3%. So at a certain point, you want to start talking about, should I have an S corporation? Because an S corporation helps to alleviate that extra tax in a big way, right? But the caveat is you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary through an S corp, and that reasonable salary is still hit with that both sides of the FICA tax, but the rest of your net income isn't. And here's an example. So say you had 100 grand of net income in your single member LLC. That 100 grand net income gets hit with the additional 15.3% in FICA on the entire amount. If that 100 grand ran through your S corporation, you could pay yourself, say, a reasonable salary of 40 grand of that 100, and only that 40,000 gets hit with that additional 15.3%. That 60,000 you could take out as distribution, and it would avoid the FICA tax, the Social Security and Medicare piece, that additional 15.3%. You avoid that on that 60,000 that you took out as distribution because you have an S corporation that you're taking out reasonable comp in the form of that $40,000 in wages. So that's why we talk about reasonable comp in an S corporation, and why at a certain level, when you have a single member LLC or a sole proprietorship, when your net income gets to a certain amount, a certain level, it makes sense to consider the S corp, because the S corp does have its own tax return, which is another cost, and it does have payroll, which is another cost. But by the time you get to 40, 50,000 of net income, the tax savings outweighs that extra admin cost. So if you have any questions about this, hit me up. Talk soon.